Please join me in Gasho. Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs. Good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Yes, you can hear me? Yes, good, okay. Still a few people coming in. I'd like to welcome you to our Shotsuki monthly service, memorial service for the month of April 2021. And I'd like to begin this morning's service with a moment of silent meditation, followed by the recitation of the name of the Buddha or the Onenbutsu. Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman. Okay. And we'll continue on now with we're going to be having the reading or chanting of the Vandana Tisarana. It's up on your screen for those of you who do not have it. And for those of you who have printed, please join us. Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to him, the exalted one, the enlightened one, the supremely awakened one. Buddham saranam gacchami. I go to the Buddha for guidance. Dhamma saranam gacchami. I go to the Dharma for guidance. Sangam saranam gacchami. I go to Sangha for guidance. No one knows, no one knows, no one knows. We will now continue on with the sutra chanting. We are going to start with the chanting as Sambujo. I will not be, following that, we will be chanting the Sambutsage, but I will not be putting the words of the Sambutsage up. Because it is the Shotsuki monthly memorial service, I will be putting up the names of the Shotsuki individuals we are honoring today, those individuals who have passed away during the month of April. Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs, Naman Nobs. Please join me in reading the English translation which you see on the screen. We respectfully welcome Amida Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome Shakyamuni Buddha to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy. We respectfully welcome the Buddha of all times and places to our temple as we scatter flowers of joy.
그여 이사
Next, we'll be reading the English translation of the Sambutsuge. So if you don't have it, it's on your screen. Please join me in the reading of the translation. Sambutsuge translation, Praises of the Buddha. Your face shines in great splendor, boundless wondrous dignity, such the greatness of your light, beyond all comparison. Brightness of the sun and moon and the shining money jewels, when compared to your brilliance, seem to us like blackest ink. Tathagata's countenance transcends all comparison. The great voice of awakening resounds throughout the 10 quarters. Your precepts, learning, effort, meditation, wisdom are virtues beyond all compare, ultimate, supreme, and rare. Your deep meditation has fathomed all the Dharma seas, to the limits and the depths of all things the Buddhas teach. Ignorance, anger, and greed, the world-honored one has none. Like a lion among men, measureless your great virtues. Vast are your great virtuous deeds. Your deep wisdom is profound. Your radiant luminous light shakes all the world's foundations. When I become a Buddha, equal to the Dharma King, I will transcend birth and death, liberating all beings. My giving, discipline, precepts, patience, and effort, meditation, and wisdom shall be supreme, unsurpassed. When I attain Buddhahood, everywhere fulfill my vow, bringing peace and tranquility to all beings in doubt and fear. Though there are myriad Buddhas, beyond measure, beyond count, and great sages numberless, like the grains of Ganges sand, I will honor each of them, equally accepting none. Even more importantly, I will seek the supreme way. Even though all Buddha worlds are countless as Ganges sands, even though all lands and realms are boundless without measure, yet my light shall reach them all and illumine every place. Such shall be my perfect work, such my power infinite. When I attain Buddhahood, my land will be first and best, place of practice transcendent, its people sublime and rare. My land is like nirvana, beyond all comparison. In my sincere compassion, I will enlighten all beings. All who come from the 10 quarters to be born into my land will be pure, filled with gladness, peace, and great tranquility. O Buddhas of the 10 quarters, this my true revelation. In this way I've made my vows, and I will strive to fulfill them. Buddhas of the 10 quarters, with your wisdom unimpeded, may I always call on you to reveal my intentions. Though my body undergoes so much pain and suffering, I will persevere and strive patiently without regret. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. So once again, welcome and thank you for joining us for this April Shotsuki monthly memorial service, in which we remember loved ones who passed on during this month of April. Of course, for myself, it is also my Shotsuki service, as I remember my father, who passed away on April 24th, 2014. This Shotsuki monthly memorial service is an opportunity for us, of course, to remember our loved ones. But at the same time, just as importantly, it is said that through our loved ones, they have given us an opportunity to listen to the Dharma. And so I'd like to begin my talk this morning with a reading, and I'm just going to pull it up. This is a quote, and I'm going to read this quote as my opening passage. The greatest tragedy in the modern age is the intensification and confrontations and conflicts. Economic confrontations between nations rooted in nationalistic desires for natural resources are getting more and more intense every year. Also, ideological confrontations between nations pose a major threat to world peace. Furthermore, racial as well as religious confrontations are getting more and more serious. The Mahayana teaching of non-ego, emptiness, and dependent origination are based on the realization that in the absolute reality, there is no such dualities and confrontations. The Nembutsu stands on the same Mahayana principle. In the Nembutsu, there are no such confrontations as enemy and friend, men and women, rich and poor, good and evil, and even Amida and myself. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. This actually is a quote, and it's very dear to me because it's a quote from my maternal grandfather, Professor Shoken Yamazaki, and it was written in the Pure Land, a Journal of Pure Land Buddhism, published in December 1984. Sorry about that. So the reason why this quote, why I quoted this is because I wanted to share some thoughts on events that have been going on recently in our society. As you know, this past year has been truly a trying and difficult year with this COVID-19 pandemic. It has brought both the best and the worst in all of us. During the early days of the pandemic, I'm sure you can remember as people would go outside at 7 o'clock at night to bang their pots and whatnot to show support to our frontline workers. And there was a true sense of camaraderie as we rallied together to express our appreciation. However, more recently, with the frustration of the ongoing and prolonged effects of the pandemic, we have seen an escalation, in particular, of hate crimes, Asian hate crimes to be specific. And it brings up memories of the hard feelings that were expressed towards people of the Muslim faith after the the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks against the World Trade Centers in New York. You know, after that event, I actually wrote an article, and this is when I introduced this passage from my maternal grandfather. Of course, when we think of what happened after the terrorist attacks in 2001, immediately afterwards, the different government leaders made comments, etc., on it. And then after that, we began seeing this increase in hard feelings towards people of the Islamic faith. And as I reflected on this, at that time I mentioned that during such times we must turn to our teachings for guidance, the Buddhist teachings for guidance. And when we think about the Buddhist teachings, it is an opportunity to reflect within ourselves. So what I had mentioned back then is that, you know, the opportunity exists for us to reflect and see, not pointing out who's in the right or who's in the wrong, but to reflect on where such hatred is born from. When we think of what had happened with the terrorist attacks, that attack was not a spur-of-the-moment event. It was a planned out. It took them years months, if not years, to plan out. Somebody had to go to flight school to learn how to fly these jet planes, etc. So it was a very deep-rooted hatred. The terrorists, at least, had a very deep-rooted hatred towards the West, and then consequently, this spurred on more hatred from people in the West. And when we think of what the Buddha had taught us, he had taught us in his Dhammapada that hatred is not overcome by hatred, that hatred is overcome by love and understanding. And so when we start thinking about that, we wonder, where did this initial hatred come from? And when we think about our world, it comes from the inequities that exist. We live in a very opulent and society of great luxuries. In fact, we live in the top 5% of life here on Earth, in our society. We live in the top 5%. But at what cost are we living our daily life? When we look at, when we go to our stores, we want to have our nice clothes and produce and food, etc. But we also want it at a reasonable price. So then the international conglomerates go to produce this material, and where do they go to? They go to places where they have cheap labor. And so just by doing that, there's going to create inequality within the world. There's going to be the haves and have-nots. And whenever you have that imbalance, there's going to be sentiments of jealousy or hatred towards those who might have. And so in such a time, when the Buddha tells us that he said that this world was a world of suffering, and this is why it's called the world of saha, which is the world of suffering or delusions. And in fact, in order to overcome that, we have to reflect and see that, in fact, as my grandfather had quoted, that in the ultimate reality of things, there is no dualities, in that we all live in the one world. We all live as one human species, and we must come together and understand one another. You know, one of the things that I enjoy or I miss during this pandemic, of course, has been the opportunity to travel. I'm sure many of you have missed that. And one of the places, as I was thinking about this, there's a temple in Japan, in Kyoto, called Ryoanji. And Ryoanji is famous for its rock garden. It's probably got the most famous rock garden in Japan. And you can see the picture that I brought up on the screen. I'm sure some of you have gone to this temple. It is located pretty close to the Kinkakuji, the Golden Pavilion Temple in Kyoto. And this rock garden, as I mentioned, is probably the most famous rock garden in Japan. I've gone there numerous times. And you sit on, there's a little balcony or ledge, wooden hallway that you sit and you look out at this garden. But what's interesting about this rock garden is that in its design, when they designed it, you have these islands of stones, right? And there are actually 15 larger stones or rocks, if you want to call them, that are placed in this rock garden. However, what's interesting is that no matter which angle you look from, you can only see 14 rocks at the most. Okay? You can't see all 15 rocks at the same time. So even if you move around from place to place, one rock is always hidden by another rock, depending on your angle that you're looking at. So it's impossible for you to see all 15 at the same time. And this is a Zen temple and you're supposed to contemplate on this. And what it is saying is that this is our reality, in that we often think we see the truth, but we're only seeing partial truths. We think I am right and that person is wrong, and that perspective or my viewpoint is like this. We're only seeing part of the whole truth. And so what, according to this Zen garden, this rock garden at Ryoanji, the only way you can see all 15 rocks is through what they call the mind's eye. So that's when you deeply meditate on, contemplate on it, and then you're able to see, apparently, the 15th rock together. Also in this very same temple is this little basin. There was a tea ceremony room that was built in this temple around the 17th century. And this, it's called a tsukubai, or it's a water basin, and it sits in front of this tea room, and it's to purify oneself before they enter the tea room. They're supposed to wash their hands, etc. And what's unique about this particular basin is that it's made up of, you can see these characters on the outside edge, you see? And the square in the center where the water basin is, this square, when added to the characters on the surrounding, make up individual characters. Okay? And if we look at it, so that the first character, if you have the square basin below, and above it is this character, this is actually a character for 5, but when you put it together, this is read as ware, or self in English, okay, ware. And then the square, again, when it's put together with the character on the left-hand side or right-hand side of it, it comes out with this character, which means tada, or just, okay, just, or simply, just or simply, okay? And then the next one, taru. Again, when you add the bottom, what's underneath that basin, and then the basin together, it creates this character, taru, or enough, okay, enough. And finally, when you put it together with the character on the left-hand side, it comes out to the character shiru, or know. So when we add these all together, I, just, enough, know. Okay? Or translating this, it becomes true peace and happiness comes through knowing what is enough. Or true contentment and happiness comes from appreciating what one has. So in this basin, what it's telling us is that when we truly understand, or when we appreciate what we have, that's where we get true peace. And the reason why I bring this water basin up is that the memorial service serves a very important function for us. During the monthly memorial service, what we are doing is we are putting somebody else before us. So before my thoughts, I'm thinking about somebody else, okay? So putting somebody before you is a way for you to receive humbleness, or is the practice of what we call non-ego, okay? Not thinking always about just myself, but today you're thinking about somebody else, right? And so this is a very important step in bringing about peace, is when we start thinking of others before ourselves. So when we think about Asian hate crimes that might be going on, it's very easy for us to reflect and say, oh, these people are ignorant, or these people, well, they're not good, right? But in fact, the Buddhist way of looking at it would be to reflect within ourselves and see, is there a way that we can promote conversations? Is there a way for us to promote an understanding that goes beyond the thoughts of dualities of us versus them? And this is, of course, what I found my maternal grandfather's passage to be quite profound. Even though he wrote this printed in 1984, I'll read this one more time. The greatest tragedy in the modern age is the intensification of confrontations and conflicts. Economic confrontations between nations rooted in nationalistic desires for natural resources are getting more and more intense every year. Also, ideological confrontations between nations pose a major threat to world peace. Furthermore, racial as well as religious confrontations are getting more and more serious. The Mahayana teaching of non-ego, emptiness, and dependent origination are based on the realization that in the absolute reality, there is no such dualities and confrontations. The Nembutsu stands on the same Mahayana principle. In the Nembutsu, there are no such confrontations as enemy and friend, men and women, rich and poor, good and evil, and even Amida and myself. So when we put our hands together, this is a gesture, of not confrontation, but coming together in oneness. And so as we hold these memorial services, our loved ones have given us, let me just close this. Our loved ones have given us this opportunity to reflect on oneness again and realize that through them, we are given that opportunity to think on not just myself first, but on others. And so this is truly, I believe, a very important aspect of the memorial service. So at this time, I'd like to ask you again, please join me in Gassho as we express our gratitude. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Andavs, Namo Andavs, Namo. Thank you very much. This will conclude the Shotsuki monthly memorial service for the month of April. And if you want